What does audience growth mean to you?
How many users we've got per month, how many visitors we've got, how many page views we got. But it is also important to me, what are they doing? I want that not only my numbers should go up, but I want the right kind of audience to come to my platform.
What are the core metrics that Newslaundry relies to measure audience growth and retention, or I would say loyalty basically?
We genuinely care how many people are actually ending up on our subscription page, right? We don't care actually, like there are volume traffic numbers that we do keep a sight on. But for us, a lot more important number is how many people are subscribing, what is the conversion that our articles or our stories are driving from top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel, and a lot more numbers around habit forming and engagement.
As you straddle both the worlds, right, print and digital, which audience metrics do you see, most in, specifically in driving your critical growth?
Decade earlier, back in the past era, most of the news sellers, publishers used to sell space in the form of display ads, banner ads. They were sold in form of CPM. But believe you me, the pace at which the inventory is being bought today, there is a huge shift. And if you look at all the big advertising firms and brands today are wanting to buy audiences.
Could all of you share a specific example where, an insight or data led to a change in your, content strategy or your product content or your marketing or your product strategy?
A couple of days back, we were just sitting and analyzing a story about a weight loss medicine. It's very common nowadays. And I normally expected that the normal diabetologist, or a cardiologist would be reading more about the weight loss medicine because they will be the ones prescribing it. But what we realized in terms of the analytics was that story was read more by orthopedicians because, those people who are heavy, their knees pack up after some time. So if they use the medicine on their patients, they can save the knee. So they would also be prescribers.
You have Gen Zs, you have millennials, you have older readers, you also have specialist users, right? So when it comes to user acquisition, what's your strategy out there?
I think there's a lot of conversations around Gen Z, but young people historically don't pay for news, right? I don't think that's a new problem.
That's true.
Welcome to our next session, The Metrics That Matter, Unlocking Audience Growth. In today's crowded digital landscape, page views alone do not build a sustainable media business. To truly thrive, publishers need to look beyond vanity metrics and focus on the data points that actually drive loyalty, subscriptions, and long-term revenue. This discussion will cut through the noise to spotlight the strategies and indicators that can help publishers harness data, build strong audience relationship, and secure digital sustainability for the future. This session is powered by Google, and we are grateful for their support. Joining us on this panel are Chitranshu Tewari, who has spent over a decade in product and subscription roles in media, most recently leading Newslaundry's product and subscription business. In 2024, he was among 25 media leaders globally selected for the AI Journalism Lab at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism. Hemant Jain, President and Head of Digital Business at Lokmat Media Private Limited. With nearly 3 decades in digital media, Hemant has led Lokmat to become India's most successful Marathi digital media company. Meghna, Singhania, founder and editor-in-chief of Medical Dialogues, a dedicated medical and health news platform in India. The platform also joined the WHO Vaccine Safety Net and received the IFCN Build Grant 2024 to combat medical misinformation. To moderate this important conversation, we have with us Swetha Suzanne Elias. Swetha is a strategic partner development manager for news partnerships at Google and brings over 15 years of experience from leading roles at Google, Meta, and TikTok. She's worked extensively across content partnerships, digital marketing, branding, and business development. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Swetha Suzanne Elias, and our panelists, Chitranshu, Hemant, and Meghna to the stage.
Hey everyone, a very good evening. I know it was such a nice session, and now we are coming to maybe a boring topic, which is on audience growth. Hopefully, we'll also try to entertain you all a bit and talk on all things audience growth. So as you can see the topic, right, we're going to talk about metrics that matter. And why we chose this topic is also because a few months back at Google, we launched a program on audience growth with news publishers. And one of the common thing I saw when, we were having discussions with each of the publishers, be it from the legacy media to the digital natives to even broadcasting news publishers, one common insight I saw was most of the publishers are like, yeah, we are data centric. Yes, we're looking at data. And when I was trying to understand, what kind of data are you looking at? Most of them, say, for example, if you talk about websites, they were like, yeah, we're looking at page views. When it comes to, YouTube and videos, yes, we're looking at video views. We have a subscriber base of 10 million plus or 20 million plus. And, each of our video covers or gets 1 million, 2 million views, per video that we put up. So these were the things that, I was hearing from the publishers. But when I was trying to dig deep and, understand on what else are you looking at? So say, for example, when we talk about articles, are you looking at scroll depth? Are you looking at for per article that you have, what is the scroll depth? Or when you look at videos, are you looking at not just the views that you get, but are you looking at the total watch time? That is what engagement is about. And are you looking at those kind of metrics or just the overall vanity metrics, as we say, right? And that's why I was like, no, half of them were not. I wouldn't say all, but at least majority of the publishers, including the top, were not looking at a lot of, in-depth or advanced data. And that's where, we're like, we should talk about it. We should talk and understand how different publishers are using data. And that's why, we have 3 set of different panelists here today. We have Meghna from Medical Dialogues, whose focus is very much on a niche audience area, which is medical journalism. We have Chitranshu from, again, he was working at Newslaundry and leading the entire product. And it's a very subscriptions-based model, so that's a different model there. And then we have Hemant from Lokmat. Again, as we said, they've been into the print and now currently foraying also into the digital and doing great there. So we have 3 different types of publishers, and we're going to hear from them on, how they've been using data. Cool. So getting started off with the topic, I think, Meghna, starting off with you. Again, I think you are, Medical Dialogues is catering to a very specialized set of audience, right? Specifically into the healthcare. So what does audience growth mean to you? Specifically when you have all of these healthcare audience, which is, of course, mostly doctors and stuff, right? So what does audience growth mean to you?
Yeah, so our platform is purely medical journalism. And just to give a background, it's focusing only on doctors and healthcare professionals. So the audience size is very less. Although I would also focus on the matrices like how many users we've got per month, how many visitors we've got, how many page views we got. But it is also important to me, what are they doing? I want that not only my numbers should go up, but I want the right kind of audience to come to my platform. So I would want to know how many doctors are reading my numbers. Are they coming back again and again? See, because my universe is small, so it's not going to grow. It's not that, the universe of doctors suddenly going to flourish and they're going to be lakhs and lakhs of doctors in the country. So for us, the numbers that matter are how many doctors are coming to the platform. Are they coming back again and again? So in terms of, for us, growth would be a doctor coming back at least 15 times in a month to use the platform. So the retention, the repeat users, these matrices are more important to us than the actual numbers. Another thing that we focus on is obviously we have our daily newsletters which we send out to doctors. So the other parameters that we look into is how many people are opening our newsletters, how much time are they spending. So all these matrices for a niche audience, we focus more on than the actual number of, the vanity matrix, as you said, the page views and the total number that should go up. So that is what is relevant for us.
Got it. Chitranshu, coming to you, Newslaundry has, stood out with its subscription first and independent journalism model, right? So unlike other publishers who focus a lot on scale, what are the core metrics that Newslaundry relies to measure audience growth and retention, or I would say loyalty, basically?
Yeah, so I think for us, we've never really chased scale or vanity metrics because there are ways you can game the traffic, right? For example, the entire media industry, specifically with ad they have something called the ABC model. So if you do content around astrology, Bollywood, cricket, spirituality, devotion content, it will bring you like a lot of traffic. And conventionally, the media model is like based on them. But with Newslaundry, Newslaundry was started with the understanding that the reason why a large part of the media ecosystem is messed up has to do with how it makes money. So even right when we started, we had that kind of clarity. So for us, all the data we look at or we track has to do with like subscriber or subscriber conversion. So a lot of numbers around subscribers, a lot of numbers around. So we genuinely care how many people are actually ending up on our subscription page, right? We don't care actually, like there are volume traffic numbers that we do keep a sight on. But for us, a lot more important number is how many people are subscribing, what is the conversion that our articles or our stories are driving from top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel. And a lot more numbers around habit forming and engagement, right? Like for us, it's very important to build an habit of our product and our journalism, right? Because it's very easy for one article to go viral. It gets you like a lot of page views, attention, but that's about it. But in like a subscription setup, you really need to build an engagement. So for us, a lot of our metrics around our podcast numbers, right? Because for us, that's like a very crucial habit forming product. So, right. So what are the kind of podcasts people are listening to? How long are they listening to? Where are they sort of dropping off? And then a lot of first party data. One of the things that we understood really early on that a lot of these vanity metrics is not really of use. So we've invested a lot of resources in capturing first party data. So who are the kind of people who are commenting on our stories for that matter, right? Who are the kind of people who are trying to pay but their subscription has failed for whatever reason? When someone cancels, there's a cancellation journey, right? So a lot of data, what is the kind of content they're consuming. So basically all the data metrics which is around when a subscriber is onboarded, is about to be onboarded or is canceling their subscription, so that we can augment our journalism more in line with like what's good for subscription as well, because that's the other thing, right? Conventionally what happens is that the editorial team and the sales team are not aligned with each other. That's also one of the reasons why journalists look down upon sales team for that matter. But so it's important for us that the incentives for both the teams are same, right? Because more subscribers mean we can hire more reporters, we can do more long form journalism. Yeah.
Thanks, Chitranshu. Coming to you, Hemant. Again, Lokmat is one of Maharashtra's top print news publisher and has also forayed well into the digital, right? As you straddle both the worlds, right, print and digital, which audience metrics do you see, most in, specifically in driving your critical growth?
So, hi, good evening, everyone. I think so. In today's time, when we talk about data, while it's a four-letter word, in my view, it's pretty complex. Each of us have a fascination when it comes to data, but the most important thing is what do we do with that data? So if you look at the evolution of content, from the large screen to the small screen, from newspaper to television to web, in between, I'm missing the e-paper. And now we've moved into formats which are video, and we're talking about short video formats, right? Social media, etc. It's not as simple as about saying which are 1 or 2, 3, 4 important metrics which are important. Data today has an extremely important impact on your decision making, right from the content you create, right? So, for example, in our newsrooms, gone are the days when we used to look at video views or page views to a much stricter norm of saying what's an average time spent on the content created. And why is that important? Because most of the news publishers today have no other option but are forced to align their strategy of content creation largely to the big tech firms. Because, to be very fair, most of the traffic which comes to a specific news site are largely discovered through the big tech firms. So whether it is Google, whether it is Facebook, which is Meta, there are ways to cross-pollinate through Instagram, and then there are native players like Taboola. There can be n number of distribution platforms which are largely tech-driven firms today, and WhatsApp, for example, all of you would receive news links or videos in the morning. So if you look at any of the big tech firm today, one of the most important KPI, whether it is YouTube in the form of video or it is web articles, is the average time spent. It's about retention. And where does it kind of correlate with? It correlates with the quality of the content. So if you are a news creator, irrespective whether a news media company or an individual creator like a Dhruv Rathi or a Nitish Rajput or any podcaster, at the end of the day, you have to keep in mind that your choice of topic and the value inside the content has to lead to people spending more time consuming your content. Because the moment somebody is spending more time consuming the content, these are automatic signals which get picked up saying this content is worth, this content is valued, can it be shared to more number of people, right? So this is for example, I'm just sharing one of the dimensions of the KPIs that we look at. The other very, very interesting point which I would like to share with you is when you run a business, you have to align your KPI also to the manner in which your business gets monetized or the revenue gets created. So I would say a decade earlier back in the past era, most of the news sellers, publishers used to sell space in the form of display ads, banner ads. They were sold in form of CPM. But believe you me, the pace at which the inventory is being bought today, there is a huge shift. And if you look at all the big advertising firms and brands today are wanting to buy audiences. Now, how do you create those cohort of audiences from the data set of users coming and consuming content? I'm using the word content because it could be non-news, which is hard news, or it could be soft news in the form of entertainment, lifestyle, health, by the way, which is consumed more than news today, becomes extremely, extremely imperative for any news media publisher. And that is what they have never been used to, because their core investments and their focus has always been into the journey of content creation, which has been very, very core to their existence.
Thanks for that, viewpoint, specifically, when it comes from a print publisher and what was important and now what has changed. Coming to the next question, could all of you share like a specific example where, an insight or data led to like a change in your, content strategy or your product content or your marketing or your product strategy?
So in our case, data is a part of daily editorial beats. We have used a lot of tools like Google Analytics as well as the news consumer insights. And we've actually gone down a depth. So it's not about how many page views are there, how many stories are being read. We have our audiences are doctors, and that is also divided into cardiologists, nephrologists, gynecologists. So we've gone into the analytics of it that our stories, which gynecologist is reading what story, or if a story is there, how many cardiologists have read, how many nephrologists have read. And that is not just one thing that, suddenly there'll be a big shift in your marketing or product strategy. It has to be a part of your daily updates. Yeah. So, just giving an example, a couple of days back, we were just sitting and analyzing a story about a weight loss medicine. It's very common nowadays. Our stories are a little more technical, or for doctors, how to use it, when to use it, and so on and so forth. And I normally expected that the normal diabetologist, or a cardiologist would be reading more about the weight loss medicine because they will be the ones prescribing it. But what we realized in terms of the analytics was that story was read more by orthopedicians. And I was talking to my editor, again, the medical news editor, who's a doctor, that, orthopedicians have read more. Which said, obviously, they would be interested because, those people who are heavy, their knees pack up after some time. So if they use the medicine on their patients, they can save the knee. So they would also be prescribers. So that story, that was a new insight for me, okay, that this story, what I expected, that audience is not reading it, some other audience is reading it. For the editor, that feedback was that he went back, he dug down, he created another story for orthopedicians on that medicine, which was more useful to them. So it's not about the daily, it's not about the one strategy move that's going to be there. It has to be a part of your daily practice. You have to understand your audience. So all that discussion today we are having is talking about audience. We have to know who they are. Like Chitranshu probably said that, first party data. Yeah. Who are they? What are they doing? What are they like? What are their age? What do they do? Yeah. What do they like to read? If you are able to figure that out, then you are able to create stories which are more relevant for them. Yeah. And if they are more relevant, then your readers are more loyal. Yeah. So that's, I beg to differ from your question, that rather than having one product strategy that changes, it has to be a part of your daily process. Yeah.
Which also means that, when you need to look at data like on a daily basis or a weekly basis, and not that, okay, every month I'll just look at how's the audience data and all that, but you need to keep a check on it all the time. Because, of course, it can just change at any point of time.
Yeah, agreed. So it's not just about one story is performing or this story is performing. Yeah. We have to dig down why is this story performing, and more importantly, nowadays, correct, who is this story performing with?
Yeah.
So that's sort of that's how we take it at our newsroom.
Chitranshu, what about you?
I think for Newslaundry, for us, a lot of these things were accounted for right from day one, right? Because we didn't really have the comfort of ad revenue, right? So it's not like we have some money coming from ads, so we'll figure these things out. So I think in Newslaundry's journey specifically, a lot of these conversations around user persona, who our readers are, what is it that they are coming to our platform for? I think that's a very critical question for everyone in the newsroom, because newsrooms also have this habit of that we will do everything and anything that we feel like, and then we'll figure out a strategy, right? So, and specifically in subscription, because subscription is still like a niche business. But to answer your question, so a lot of things and formats that we bet on early on had a lot to do with data. So for example, we started doing podcasts like 8 years back. Back then there was no Spotify. Apple Podcasts was not as big. It was still part of iTunes, right? But one of the critical data that we looked at was that for us, like I said, that anything that brings in repeat users, anything that helps us sort of bring help us create an habit for the user, for us that is a win-win. And we realized early on that podcasts are a great medium to do that, because if you're in someone's ear for like an hour a week, they're likely to pay for it if you ask them to contribute, etc. Right? So a lot of editorial, a lot of product decisions that we took were actually in line with that. So right, so not only we expanded the number of podcast shows we were doing, we used to do 2 shows, and then we sort of expanded. Now I think Newslaundry has close to 6 or 7 weekly shows and like one fortnightly show, which is like a deep dive podcast. And we also invested product resources around it. So, right, so we were the first one in the market to build like a native podcast player, right? Because we wanted to collect first party data to understand who our audiences are. So we built it first on the website, and then we built it obviously as part of our app. I think Yatharth was here, who's one of our early developers. So we did that early on, and I think that's very important, because again, a lot of product decisions in newsrooms are actually not in line with data, right? So for example, just if you look at Newslaundry's website, the homepage hasn't changed drastically in the last 3 to 4 years, but a lot of that work that we have done, whether it's on the app, whether it's first party data, whether it's accessibility, whether it's making sure that when it comes to paying for our product, the friction is not there. So a lot of our resources has been there, whereas if you look at a lot of newsrooms, they're obsessed with having these fancy front-end pages, story pages, half the time which doesn't even load actually, because India more than 98% of the traffic is mobile. So I think it's important to look at data both from an editorial and product standpoint as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Chitranshu. What about you, Hemant?
I think so there is enough and more data available. It is like during the exams, you wanted to buy all the guides available in the market Yeah, and you wanted your friends' notebooks and homework books to ensure that you read it all. And at the end, you would realize that all of us couldn't even finish our own notebooks. I think so data has to be largely driven with an objective, right? Now, typically, if you look at a life of a news publisher, there are two, three aspects which are very important. In terms of one, how do I get traffic to my site? Once a user comes to the site, how do I get him to consume more? Which could be in the form of he reading more articles or he watching more video content or a photo gallery or a web story. There's no dearth of formats today. It keeps reinventing, you know? And the third thing you would say, how do I get him to consume? How do I get him to visit me more frequently? So if a user is coming only once in a week, can I get him twice in a week? If a user is coming once in a month, can I get him thrice in a month? Right? And there would be fly-by-night kind of users who come once in 2 months. Now, all these decisions are based on any kind of customer data platform that you implement, right? And that is where today everybody's talking about first-party customer. Now, what is a first-party customer? Where, say, for example, I click on a Google tab and I'm able to capture the email ID of the person and the name of the person. But I don't know anything beyond that. Whether the person is a male, female, etc., etc. There's so much of enrichment of data. Now, that's a journey. Typically, if you look at any of the loyalty programs, that's a journey. It's a very difficult journey. If you ask me personally, for us to collect the first-party data of 1.5 million users, crazy. It's not so simple. Then the second journey would be, how do you enrich the data? Why do you need to enrich the data? So that you can get to know your users much better. Now, there is always an on-the-product experience, and there are ways to remarket and get the users back, right? Now, when you look at on-the-product experience, what would you do with the user if you know his choice of content, his frequency of usage, visitation, etc.? You would be able to give a little bit more personalized experience to your user, right? And that level of personalization can further drill down depending on how much you know your customer, how better you know your customers, right? And the more deeper you know your audience is, the better over a period of time will become your ability to monetize also. So that's point number one. Point number two, I would like to share a very interesting example. So in 2016, when I joined them, for 100 years, we were the largest in Maharashtra in Marathi language. Maharashtra has a population of 125 million as per 2012 census, of which in 2012 census it indicated that 82% people can read, write or speak in Marathi language. And 2017 KPMG Language of India report suggested that Marathi would be the second largest Indic language on internet after Hindi. So if Hindi is 225 million, Marathi would end up being around 60 million. And then followed by the 3-4 southern languages put together would be around 100 million. Now today when we look at our print readership, we do around 25 million cumulative readers in a month. I do around 30 million on internet, which is web. We have the largest social media community. We have got close to 20 different pages, including 10 hyperlocal city pages, which are different cities of Maharashtra. We are the only ones who build that with Meta. We have got close to 7 product pages. We have 10 Instagram pages, and that cumulative community is 48 million. Even if I do a deduplication between the web audience and the social media audience, I can very safely bet on it. I reach to 90% people in Maharashtra who are consuming content in Marathi language in India. Now that's a big one, right? But do I have data for those 90% of the users? My answer is no. Is it easy for a news publisher to become a data company? My answer is no. I will always have dependency on people who specialize in data, which is fine because to build the technology for capturing data is not my core, but managing the process of using those third-party tech tools to capture the data. So whether it is products provided by Google or any large tech firm across the world, I'm fine to partner with them. But what do I do with that data to better my product in terms of user experience? Why? Because if I'm able to deliver a great product experience, the probability of the user coming back becomes higher, a great, clean environment. Second would be the content which is core to any publisher today. Can I create good quality, resonating content, invest more in categories which are consumed more rather than saying, oh, I want to create hard news because I come from a genetics of, doing news publication which is around crimes and politics. Not really. So the third aspect would be how do I, invest in marketing on the back of the data insights I have. So I would say data today and for tomorrow is already the core of any decision making for any content publisher, whether it is news or non-news, to see how you could move into building an extremely profitable business and getting a users back to consume more of the content.
Got it. I think while we've been talking a lot about data, I think let's also talk about users. I think over the last 2 days, we've been hearing about, different users. Like you have Gen Zs, you have millennials, you have older readers. You also have specialist users, right? So when it comes to user acquisition, what's your strategy out there? Like, are you focusing on all the user segments? Because each user behaves differently, right? Each segment of users behave differently. So how are you looking at that?
So I wouldn't have the answer to the Gen Z question because I think even the Gen Zs don't know how they have to behave or how they will behave. So that's the unpredictable part. But apart from that, we do have split ups. So as I said, we have 22 specializations. Now, a cardiologist wants to read what's happening in cardiology. Gynecologist wants to read what's happening in gynecology. A Gen Z benchmark for me would be a medical student. So they want to read about education, about jobs. So we try and that's where the first party data also comes in, which is very important,
Yeah.
When a person registers, we ask them who you are. Are you a student? So that is trying to capture the data. That's the most difficult process, but that's when you have got it, then you can play around with it. So once I know that this person is a medical student, I can show him his related content. The desktop changes suddenly, the homepage becomes specific to that. So we bring in an element of personalization, not just with the news. Maybe the students, who are just pass outs are looking for jobs. So they get a job dashboard as well.
Yeah.
Even in terms of advertisers, we have a lot of coaching institutes. So if it's a medical student, we give them coupons. Yeah. So a lot of things change both from the content as well as the monetization part. And yes, everybody has a different requirement. Yeah. So the first party data comes in there only that once you know who you are, then you are able to analyze and meet the needs of that person.
Yeah. For Newslaundry?
Yeah. See, I think there are also a lot of limitations to data-led decisions. So I feel like this conversation. So to answer your question, so the way Newslaundry and News Minute works is not like we'll identify an audience, figure out what they like, right? And then do content around that, because that's a very bad strategy, right? Because a big boss will always have more views and clicks than say like a documentary. So that's one. And also first party data, it's not like we are obsessed with first party data, right? I think that's also important to understand. Like, for an example, if you go to an insurance product, right? Like if you go to Policy Bazaar, you have to give in your number. Correct. I feel like that's a really bad user experience. So whatever user journey you will see at Newslaundry, we will never force you to give your number, right? So there are certain features you can unlock, right? We can inform you whether your subscription is about to cancel or renew. So I think that's very important to keep in mind. Coming to the question of how to segment your content, I think there's a lot of conversations around Gen Z, but young people historically don't pay for news, right? I don't think that's a new problem.
That's true.
Historically, they have not paid for news. They don't really engage with news. news.
Yeah.
So I also feel like some of it is not like a solvable problem. But I think what Newslaundry has done is that we've been able to take a story and then augment the distribution strategy of that story depending on what audience, right? So for example, last 3 months, Newslaundry and Newsminute have collaborated and done a lot of long form journalism, right? Now, how that story is packaged for like in Gen Z audience vis-a-vis someone who is in the diaspora community is very different, right? So there's a lot of like short form content around these long form stories, right? So that's more primed for Gen Z. There's a lot more audio content. There's a lot more content on what it took, right? Where the reporter sort of takes you behind the scene. That is obviously more primed for people who work in media, people who have a better understanding. So I feel like that's a slightly better strategy where you let the editors decide this is an important story, and then you augment your distribution strategy depending on what audience
basically,
you want to reach
different
out.
formats.
Yeah, because the thing is, once we have done a good story, right, then let's figure out how we use data. Because if you let data decide what the story is, you will never have the kind of journalism that Newslaundry and Newsminute do for that matter.
Correct. Yeah. Totally agree on that. A question to you again, Meghna. I think with your highly specialized audience, right, as you said, it's healthcare. How do you approach content personalization? Because that matters a lot to you, right? Like to serve to these specific set of doctors who are into different fields. So how does personalization work for you?
So there is obviously the tech aspect where the personalization works, and then obviously the content aspect comes out of, the various news needs that they have. You have to try to understand your audience. Try to make a guess if you are not able to exactly figure out what they want, but they will have certain form of news needs. Like for example, a student would want to know in terms of exams or counseling. So you have to understand that kind of news needs of your reader, or try to predict it. And then based on that, serve them that particular thing. That's what creates a loyal reader. They keep on coming back because they've probably got what they need. It's not an exact strategy, but you'll have to do a little bit of hit and trial to figure out. It does take time, but it's important to understand your audience and reader before you move ahead.
Yeah, got it. Chitranshu, I think again, for Newslaundry, again, it's a subscription ad-free platform, right? So how do you define key stages of your reader funnel? What metrics are you focused on at each stage to move users towards final payment?
I think it's very important to know, like you as a newsroom, you have different kinds of content, right? And in publishing, you have something called like a funnel strategy, right? You have certain kind of content that bring in the user, certain kind of content that will push the user to sort of subscribe or pay, and then certain kind of content that like sits in the middle. So I feel like you should be able to identify which story, which content fits where. So if you look at, I think that's true for most publishers, specifically digital publishers. YouTube is by far the largest. It sits like top of the funnel, right? So a lot of our text reporting, a lot of our long form journalism actually is sort of discovered through Newsense, right? So you will always see a lot of shows that we have on YouTube. You'll always see like a snippet from a story that we have done. You'll always see like a reporter coming and talking about. So I think that kind of strategy is very important, where you can sort of understand where the audience is coming from and then sort of augment it according to that, right? And so that's something that we've done a lot. One of the other things is that, again, it really goes back to understanding what is it that the user is paying for, right? So a lot of it also has to do with the fact that, okay, we know that this is a 12,000 word story will not be read by like 1 lakh, 2 lakh people, right? But will it be read by enough people who are willing to pay like 5,000 rupees for that story? So a lot of those decisions are very critical when we are talking about what is the kind of content we should do, what is the kind of show we should do. So, right. So one of the things that you will see with Newslaundry and with Newsminute, because both newsrooms work very closely with each other, you can actually look at a story title and tell whether it's a Newslaundry and Newsminute story, right? So that kind of clarity in terms of brand is very important, right? So if you show a Newslaundry story to any of our reader or subscriber without the Newslaundry logo or branding, 8 out of 10 times they will be able to tell you that this is a Newslaundry story, right? So that kind of clarity, it is very important to sort of convey from your content choices and the kind of stories that you are doing.
I think since we just have 5 more minutes, we have a good set of audience here. Coming to you, Hemant, yeah, I think if you would want to give like one piece of actionable advice to emerging news publishers, right? Specifically in the audience, on where to focus on their limited resources for maximum audience impact, what would it be? Just a one line on that.
I wish it was so simple. I mean, it's pretty complex, but I would say, irrespective of news, non-news, I think so it's important to be sticking to your core in life. You should always have one space which you should always occupy and stay true to that and try to be the best in that. Everything else will kind of get structured around your core competency. Please do not try to delve into areas just because you believe that you will get more users the moment you broad base your category, and also because all of us suffer from FOMO, and because of social media it's only increasing by the day. I believe it's good to be a vertical than be a horizontal. It's good to be, and we have seen so many recent examples when, creators have beaten down some of the top news journalists to take, say, an interview of Mr. Vijay Mallya didn't happen to a news media house, it happened to an individual creator. So I'm saying there are opportunities to be agile, to be, very, very focused on a single point. So stay true to that, I would say.
Thanks.
Can I give a quick? So I don't think Vijay Mallya will ever give an interview. So I think that's a very different problem. But just to answer your question, if you are doing like a subscription or a membership model, please ask for money. Be very abashed about it. Unless and until we ask for money, no one in India will pay for it. And especially if you have like a public interest newsroom. I keep meeting editors and journalists who are still very, should we ask for money? Is this something
they just
that
think should we
So
do that
unless and until you ask for money in a market like India, people will not give you money for it.
Yeah.
And again, if you are an editor or a reporter, please take an interest in product, tech, and business decisions.
Very
It's
good
okay
point.
to give them the agency, but if you are letting them do all the thinking, please be prepared for them to tell you what kind of stories you should be doing. I think the large part of the problem is we have given all the agency to like the business market, and I'm saying this as someone who works on business and product, right? So regardless of what role are you in, please take an interest in business and product
very
and
good
tech.
point, because I think that exactly is where I look at Meghna, because she's the founder, but I've also seen, how deep she gets into every single area, right? Like be it tech, be it data, everything. She just gets into everything. So I think a good point by you, Chitranshu. But one last advice that you may have before we just close.
If you are starting a newsroom or you're a startup like me, I think we do stories, we do our journalism, like we do specific medical journalism. But even as an editor, as a founder, you need to ask, why is the reader coming to you? What is the reason? What is special about you, or what is a good thing that you are doing, and then delve on it.
Yeah.
And on the other side, also try to understand the audience, that who is he that he is trying to come.
Yeah.
So that is the most important thing. As a editor, we forget that, as writers, as reporters, we do forget that. We do our stories because we are concerned about the stories, but we always forget the why.
Yeah.
So let's try to understand why that is important.
Got it. Cool. That's it. Thank you so much. Take care.